Tonight, American politics has crossed into territory that feels less like democracy and more like a high-stakes chess match between powerful men who know exactly where the bodies are buried. At the center of this storm are two former presidents, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, and a name that refuses to disappear from the American conscience, Jeffrey Epstein. This is not a story about justice. It's not even a story about truth. This is a story about leverage. It began quietly, the way Washington scandals often do. House Republicans issued subpoenas to Bill and Hillary Clinton, demanding closed-door depositions related to the Epstein investigation. On paper, this looked routine, Congress exercising oversight, asking questions, seeking accountability. But behind the scenes, the Clintons saw something else entirely. And they reacted fast. Instead of agreeing to testify, the Clintons sent Congress a 4-page letter. Not a denial. Not cooperation. A warning. In that letter, they accused lawmakers of setting up what they called a perjury trap. The message was clear. This is not an honest inquiry. This is a political ambush designed to extract contradictory statements and weaponize them later. And then Bill Clinton escalated the situation beyond Capitol Hill. He went public. Standing before cameras, Clinton issued a challenge directly to Donald Trump's Department of Justice. "Release every Epstein document that mentions me," he said. "No redactions. No selective leaks. Everything." At first glance, this looked like confidence. Like a man with nothing to hide daring his enemies to look closer. But in Washington, nothing is ever that simple. Because Clinton's demand wasn't about transparency. It was about strategy. Clinton knows something most Americans don't fully appreciate. The Epstein files are not a single folder. They're not even a few thousand pages. According to court records, investigative disclosures, and sworn statements, we are talking about millions of pages of material. Flight logs, witness testimonies, sealed depositions, financial records, emails, internal DOJ memos, names that have never been made public. And that's where the trap is sprung. If Donald Trump orders the full release of Epstein-related documents connected to Bill Clinton, he cannot stop there. He would be forced, legally and politically, to release documents connected to himself as well. And Trump knows this. He knows that full transparency is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. So Clinton's move boxed Trump in. Either Trump refuses and looks like he's hiding something, or he complies and risks detonating a political bomb that could wound them both. And make no mistake, Trump does not want that door opened any more than Clinton does. Trump has built much of his political identity on the promise to expose elites, to drain the swamp, to reveal the secrets of powerful insiders. But when it comes to Epstein, that promise has always had limits. Trump talks tough, but action has been selective. Documents are teased. Names are hinted at. But the full archive remains sealed. Because once you open everything, you lose control. And control is the one thing neither of these men is willing to surrender. This is where the story turns darker. Because while Clinton and Trump trade challenges and accusations, the Epstein files themselves remain largely inaccessible to the public. The victim stories are buried beneath legal maneuvers, political calculations, and institutional silence. The question isn't whether powerful people are named in those documents. The question is why the American people still haven't seen them. Clinton's demand for full transparency sounds righteous. But it comes with a condition. Only if Trump is willing to burn the entire house down. And Trump's silence speaks volumes. What we are witnessing is not courage. It's mutually assured destruction. Both men understand the same truth. A real reckoning would not stop with one name. It would ripple outward through donors, advisors, foreign contacts, intelligence agencies, and institutions that depend on public trust. It would raise uncomfortable questions about how Epstein was protected, who intervened on his behalf, and why accountability always seemed just out of reach. That's why neither side actually wants justice. Instead, they want dominance. Clinton uses the language of transparency to corner Trump. Trump uses the language of exposure to rally his base. Each accuses the other of hiding. Each implies guilt without stating it outright. And both ensure that nothing truly changes. And let's be clear here, accusations are not convictions. Names and documents are not proof of crimes. But secrecy, persistent, coordinated secrecy, demands explanation. And that explanation has never been given. The Epstein case represents one of the greatest institutional failures in modern American history. A convicted sex offender with powerful connections dies in federal custody under suspicious circumstances, and years later, the full record of who knew what and when remains locked away. That is not normal. And yet, it has been normalized. Congress points fingers. Presidents deflect. Agencies cite ongoing investigations that never seem to end. Meanwhile, the public is fed fragments, just enough to stay angry, never enough to demand structural change. Clinton and Trump are not enemies in this sense. They are rivals within the same system. A system that protects itself first. When Clinton accuses Congress of setting a perjury trap, he is revealing something important, not about guilt, but about fear. Fear of a process that is less about finding truth and more about producing political casualties. When Trump hesitates to release documents, he reveals the same fear. And so, the standoff continues. Each man waits for the other to blink. Each believes the other has more to lose. And in that waiting game, accountability dies quietly. But the cost of this stalemate is not measured in political points. It's measured in public trust. Because every time transparency is promised but withheld, Americans are reminded that power still plays by different rules. That justice is negotiable. That some questions are simply not allowed to be fully answered. And that realization corrodes democracy from the inside. This fight, despite the dramatic language and public bravado, is not about Epstein. Epstein is gone. He cannot testify. He cannot be tried. He cannot explain. What remains is his shadow and the way powerful men use it. Trump frames himself as the outsider willing to expose corruption, but he benefits from silence. Clinton frames himself as the victim of partisan persecution, but he benefits from complexity and delay. Both understand that ambiguity is safer than clarity. And so, the Epstein files remain what they have always been, a vault of truths too dangerous for the system to confront honestly. The real question is not who wins this political brawl. The real question is whether the American public will ever see a moment where power does not protect itself. So far, history suggests the answer is no. Because when transparency threatens everyone at the top, secrecy becomes bipartisan. And justice becomes optional.